Monica Weakley here. You know how you're supposed to post about real estate every single day on Facebook? Yes, you do. And the reason is, if we don't remind our Facebook friends what we do for a living and how we help people, they will forget about it. We know it's our job to inform, educate, and demonstrate what we do for a living. Well, I'm coaching agents all around the country, and they understand that, but they're not doing it. And I ask them, why aren't you doing it? Probably just like you. And they said, Monica, we don't know what to post. Can we just borrow your stuff? Because I love creating Facebook posts. And these can often be used over on Instagram as well. So I said yes, and people were borrowing my stuff. So I created finally a product that you can sign up for free. It is free, guys. There is no reason for you not to sign up for this. It's ghostposter.com, GHOSTPOSTR, no E in there, just TR.com. And what you're going to get is you're going to get a Facebook posting idea to your email every single day. So not only do you have this great idea, but you've been reminded, oh yeah, I need to post. And that's Monday through Friday. And if you don't love the post or you think, gosh, I'd like something else, well, you're also going to get access to a library of over 600 different posts for you to choose from by category. You're going to love it. Go sign up, ghostposter.com. Don't waste a minute. And then be sure to join the private Facebook group. All right, I'll see you in there.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm with Ty Keating. Hey, Ty.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning. And Ty is with Keller Williams Realty Elite out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Well, Ty, we had a great conversation on the podcast the other day, and you had some really good insights on tips that we as agents can use if we think or if the appraisal comes in low on the house we're selling. So what do you have for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think the most important thing to focus on is not all real estate conversations apply to everyone. Sometimes we're hyper-local and you may be in a market where you don't have low appraisals. But as we see a shift, you absolutely could start to see that. So Our market in Winston, the Triad, is a very slow, methodical growth type market, 1.5%, 2%. It's a huge year for us if we get 3% growth.
Really? So it's not like LA or Chicago or whatever.
No. And what we see though is in the limited inventory price points, we would have 4, 5, 6% growth if we didn't have appraisal issues. And it's hard to say how many we have, but there are definitely more than our fair share. So it's something that we as agents in our market have to be prepared for.
Okay. What do you mean when you're saying like the appraisal issues? Like, I don't understand.
So we know that the contract price is what the lender is going to write the loan on.
Right.
And if that contract price is not supported by the appraisal, which magically it comes in at the number most of the time.
Right, it does.
Sometimes it comes in at just an odd number above and the buyer gets to feel good about some instant equity.
Right.
But occasionally, and the one that we hear about most, and the only time that I really care about an appraisal is when it doesn't support the contract price.
Yeah. So what do we do?
So realistically, when you're in a market where you feel you may have some appraisal issues or in a price point within a specific market, I like to have that conversation on the front end.
Sure. No
matter what I do with my clients, I'm always trying to prepare them for what may happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not hypothetical rabbit holes. It's real life scenarios where we've got a nice home in a starter neighborhood where all the sales for the past 5 years have been below $175,000.
Okay.
And they've got this beautifully redone kitchen and redone master bath, and everything indicates this should go for more than that.
Right.
We have to have that conversation that I may be able to get you a buyer, and likely will get you a buyer at a price that is above the neighborhood and potentially above where an appraiser is going to value this property.
Yeah. But so like what happens if everybody agrees except the appraiser?
So the first thing that I do is when I have that conversation, I emphasize this is one person's opinion of value. And if we get a low,
but it's like the most important person's opinion, almost.
The most important. And it's so frustrating.
It's so frustrating. Yes.
I understand they're an integral part of the business and protecting the long-term success of real estate. So my hat's off to appraisers. But at the same time, when you can get a variance between one person's opinion of value, that's important to realize that it's not set in stone. And that's where, as a listing agent and even as a buyer's agent, because you've got to work to protect your client, and if they want the home, we've got to find a solution. We have options.
Okay.
So the options that I found most appealing are, obviously, you've got your contract price. Let's say it's $200,000 and you get an appraisal at $195,000. Options that come to mind: the seller, if they don't want to fuss with it, they can come down to $195,000 and they can get the deal closed. Right. The buyer, if they're able and they don't want to fuss with it, they can come up to $200,000.
But they would have to bring the cash. Like, it won't be in the loan. Right.
They'd have to bring the difference to keep that loan to value proper. And they can bring that and we can close. And those two scenarios do happen.
Yeah.
But price points, especially price points that are more susceptible, may not be dealing with buyers and sellers that have a lot of free cash.
Right.
So that brings us to the other two.
Hi, Kitty.
This is Ellie.
Hello, Ellie.
That brings us to really the other two options, which are negotiate and meet in the middle. And sometimes that negotiation can come down to, hey, you were going to ask for $3,000 in repairs, but we have this low appraisal. So we're going to work with you on the appraisal, but you're not going to get any repairs. The house is now as is. If you want to get to closing, this is our best step to do it.
But you've also been successful in, let's say it's like something larger, not like $5,000, like maybe $10,000 or something significant off for the value versus the appraisal. Yeah. Well, I guess the buyer and seller's perceived value in the appraisal. So like, what are some tips on how we can get the appraisal up?
Yeah. So there's two choices there. It can be difficult. The first one is, agents are not allowed to challenge the appraisal. The challenge of the appraisal has to come from the lender. So as a listing agent, I've got to get the buyer's agent and therefore the buyer engaged in the process, wanting the house, right? Yeah. They were just told the house is not as valuable as they thought it was. So sometimes that can cause some issues. Right. But if everyone wants to proceed, we've got to get the lender to challenge this appraisal. And the best thing that you can do there is go to your comps. Look at the comps. You're going to get a copy of the appraisal report. If you ever get a low appraisal as a listing agent, your first step is to get a copy of that report. You have to see
which
where
houses they pulled. Right.
So we're going to look at what houses. I'm going to go in depth. I might make phone calls to the listing agents. Hey, what was it with this house? Was there some kind of abnormal thing that doesn't show up in the listing? You know, is it right on a busy road and you had 20 showings and there was feedback about road noise and you finally had to cut the price and sell it. And the subject property doesn't have that same characteristic. So we should sell for higher. Right.
Okay.
So we're going to do some research. We're going to do our homework, and I'm going to pull a CMA and I'm going to go through property by property and sometimes even include pictures to send to the lender so that we can challenge that appraisal.
Right.
Most recently, I had one where we were compared to a very similar style house, but it didn't have any updates. It still had Formica kitchen.
And that's the hardest one, right? It's like if you have the neighborhood where they've all sold for, like, to use the example we're using, like 175-ish, but they all need updated. And then you have the one that's been like completely updated from like basically down to the studs. And it cost $80,000 to update it. You can't get $80,000 more. Right.
And that's where that subjectivity comes in. So unfortunately, I'll say it, it is subjective when it comes to appraisers. Again, back to that one person's opinion of value.
Right.
So they have a lot of parameters that they have to work in, and they have different parameters depending on the lender that they're working for. And that's important to know, right? But they do have the ability to adjust based on condition, and they can grade out a house and do that. And that's where
isn't there like three categories? So it's like basically a new house is one level. And like, even if you've rebuilt the entire house, if the foundation like is the same, then it can never be a new house. Right.
So great point. They are not supposed to, or really allowed in almost all circumstances, to be able to compare new construction to an existing home. It's not the same problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But with existing homes, take for example, this 90s neighborhood where homes sell 175 or so, and we know that it doesn't sound like it. I'm feeling older now, but that's a 25-year-old house, right?
Right.
25-year-old house.
Right.
And there's a lot of times where a 25-year-old house doesn't need any updates. It's just cosmetics, right?
Right.
It had a 30-year architectural roof on it. Everything's still good. Maybe they've replaced the HVAC and the water heater. But for the most part, from a cosmetic standpoint, it speaks differently in its original state than an updated house does to the buyers in the market, right?
Absolutely.
We talk about that all the time. Buyers want move-in ready.
Right.
They don't want to take on a project all the
So
time.
let's
Or if
say
they
you
do, they're
got
gonna get
an
it.
offer for like 215,
Mm-hmm.
but the appraiser is like, maybe they have adjusted for the condition a little bit, but they couldn't get all the way to 215 because the comparables are the 175.
Yeah. So back to the 2 points. You challenge with the lender and the appraiser, right?
Okay.
You give all the information to the lender, they forward that to the appraiser. I would say in our market, it's maybe 50-50 that they come up. And they usually,
Really?
if there's a $20,000 gap, they might come up 5 to 7.
Right.
They're just not going to come up the whole way.
Yeah.
So really, the tool in our arsenal is to have a phenomenal lending partner,
Mhm.
because the lender that they pre-qualified with and used, they have to know that they may lose this business. So the
Okay.
buyer can go to that lender and say, hey, we need you to order a new appraisal. Most lenders won't. And that's unfortunate. Potentially they'd rather lose the business than order a new appraisal. And maybe that's their guidelines and some things that they have to be beholden to.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it comes down to, if this transaction is to survive, if we are to get to closing, we have to make every effort we can.
But that has to come from the buyer, right?
It has to come from the buyer with regard to, are they going to order a new appraisal, and is the buyer going to be willing to switch lenders?
Correct.
If we're talking about a big enough gap, and I feel confident that we're going to be able to appraise with a different appraisal, then I'm going to do everything I can to get them to a new lender.
Right.
And then when we get them to a new lender, I'm going to have my sellers make a list, a nice little printed out Word document or whatever you want to print it out on. Leave that on the kitchen counter of all the updates that they've done.
Right.
Because it matters.
It
and
does.
when they can start showing the appraiser where they've spent money, because a lot of times homeowners have to spend money where it doesn't necessarily change the value of the house.
Right.
But it does prove a difference between the comp that was selected and the subject property. If you have a new HVAC, a new roof, new water heater, and all the cosmetic updates, the appraiser needs that information. I've talked to many appraisers throughout my years, and it all comes down to, there's a little bit of a battle between them and agents and the MLSs. They wish we gave them more information.
Right. I get calls from appraisers all the time. Like, do you remember this house that you sold? And was it like this? And you know what I mean? Because there's not necessarily a lot of information. Like if we had sold it before it sent or something like that. Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of information missing, and they're doing the best they can to plug the holes.
Of course they are. Yeah.
And the difficulty and the frustrating part is, a lot of times we try and plug the holes for them, but it's not in a way that they can accept it per the lender's guidelines.
Okay,
so
tell us more about that.
I can give them a lot of information about the property or about the comp that they selected, and say, hey, this had a foundation issue. This had mold or whatever it was.
Or whatever it is,
use the
right?
mold word, but it had
discoloration, Ty.
It was discoloration. It had fungal growth. It was next to a busy street. It was, it was a cut through, and no one wanted to live on that street.
Or it was haunted.
Any number of things. If we can provide that information, the biggest thing is it has to be tangible for them. But even if it's not tangible, if I can get them that information, human nature is they're going to start taking that into consideration, right?
Do you do like an appraiser packet for the listings if you think there's going to be an issue?
I do not do a packet on the front end. If I list a house that I think there's going to be an issue, then step one is for them to give that list of updates.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I do have my seller take care of that. That's not something that I have put together for them. It's something that I would consider doing if we felt like that would make a big difference and would help us win a listing.
Yeah.
But most of the time, there's different personality types,
Of
right?
course.
Your high Cs, they already have that information.
Right.
It's so much easier. They probably already have it typed up anyway. They just have to
Right.
get print.
Yeah.
If I'm working with someone who's a high I or high D,
It's going to be in a coloring book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
then I'm going to highlight. I'm going to hit the high notes.
Yeah.
Because I probably want that in my listing anyway. Right.
Right.
Agents are going to ask me the age of the HVAC. They're going to ask all that.
Right.
In addition to the residential property disclosures. But if
we were going to do like an appraisal packet, I like that idea of like having it there. Like you said, the agents want it anyway, so we might as well have it for the appraiser too. Like the list of updates, the comparables we're using to price the home, or some type of story maybe on why the home is priced higher, along with maybe even something that says like number of showings in the last, if it went under contract in 2 days, we had 40 showings and 16 offers. That's noteworthy, I would think, right?
That is noteworthy. And I absolutely make sure that when we have multiple offers, and honestly, usually you run into appraisal issues when you do have multiple offers, right? It's the market giving you the absolute top dollar, which may exceed what the appraiser feels the home should have sold for. But they need to have that information, again, even if it's just a subconscious element of their determining the value.
Right.
They need to know that we had, 18 showings in the first 2 days, had 4 offers all over ask price.
Right.
So
I think it's important too. It's easier to, we'll call it like affecting the appraisal instead of trying to backtrack and say, no, it's worth more than what it came in at. Right. So when you've had ones that haven't come in and you've been successful at getting them to come up, you're mainly pointing out the condition was not evaluated enough.
And I'm suggesting new comps, or I'm taking their comps that they used and I'm highlighting where I feel they could have made a different adjustment.
Got it.
That
talk to us about that.
Okay, so huge on condition, right? I can't dispute square footage. I have disputed square footage in the past.
Yeah.
We've had appraisers mismeasure a house and miss 200 square feet, right? That could be $20,000 or $40,000, right? So we're going to go to that part first. Hey, is this right? Did they get the bedroom count right? Did they get the bathroom count right?
Right.
Sometimes they mess these things up.
Of course.
I've had appraisers leave off heated square footage in the basement because they went through real quick, took pictures. None of the pictures showed the baseboard heat. So they decided that it wasn't heated and cooled. And all I had to do there to win that appraisal was to show them a picture of the baseboard heat. Hey, I think you missed this. Here's the measurements. Confirm that with your own. Oh yeah, we've got that extra $10,000 or whatever.
Nice. Boom. That's easy. So go for the low-hanging fruit first, I think is what we're saying here. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, humans by nature are stubborn, right? So most people don't like to be told they're wrong.
Nope.
So the low-hanging fruit is the facts, right? The high-hanging fruit and the harder area to get them to change their opinion of value is still the area we need to go to as agents, because I feel like you have to do everything you can for your client. We're talking in a low appraisal. We might be talking more money left on the table than their commission for hiring you. Right. So $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 difference in an appraisal, or in a starter home, $2,000 and $5,000. That can be a huge. That can stop someone from having enough down payment to make their next purchase. And now we've got 2 transactions in jeopardy.
Right.
So it comes down to, when you get into the subjective areas of condition and the underlying factors that maybe the property directly can't control, but the neighboring things can, like road noise and neighbor's house and condition, or maybe you've got a beautiful house just outside of the named neighborhood and they refuse to pull comps from within the neighborhood. Right.
That happens.
Seen that before.
Yeah.
You've got a house out in the country and they only went 3 miles, and had they gone
10.
5, then they would have 3 more comps.
Right.
I've seen that. I will go into as much detail as I possibly can. A big one in our area, and I would imagine most areas, schools.
Yeah.
If you give me comps versus my subject property that are from a worse school district, quote unquote,
Right.
worse,
Right.
then I'm going to challenge that and say, hey,
Yeah.
this zip code in this school district shows across the board that homes sell for higher than this other school district and zip
Right.
code that you pulled comps from.
Right.
And either you need to pull new comps, here's 3 of them for you,
Right.
from the correct school zone,
Right.
or we need to determine a monetary adjustment based on empirical evidence of the market
Yeah.
and the stats that the market gives you as a whole to show that, hey, homes in this zip code and school zone sell for 5% higher.
Right.
I want to see that somewhere, right?
Yeah.
That can't be left off the appraisal.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways that you can fight it. I would say if you get a low appraisal, you need to be prepared to challenge with the current appraiser, which
Mhm.
means going through the proper channels. You can't reach out to them. You have to go through the buyer and through the lender. And then the other one is have a phenomenal lender on speed dial.
Yeah.
And preferably, because we know appraisals come during the due diligence process, to keep all the dates in line, preferably a great lender that can close a loan in 21 to
Really
28
fast. Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that exact thing just happened with one that we actually just closed yesterday. And as buyers, they closed today.
Nice.
We had a low appraisal of about 25,000.
Mhm.
We were able
That's
to
a
get them to
lot.
change lenders. It's a lot. It's about 10%. It was a $330,000 home.
Yeah.
We actually had the opportunity to get all people to the table. We got them with a phenomenal lender. By the way, they ended up with a better rate.
Oh,
And the appraisal
great.
came back over the contract price. So they got
Wow.
a better rate and equity. And
Nice.
we kept 2 transactions together.
That's wonderful. Well, I think I want to just highlight some points and just kind of wrap it up here. So I think if you're in a market that that seems like, or you have a house that you're sure you're thinking it may get a lower appraisal than what it's valued at or what you think the offers will be, either due to a multiple offer situation or the market or whatever, then preemptively get the information needed that the appraiser will find useful in evaluating the property. Step 1.
Absolutely.
And prep the sellers.
Prep the
Okay.
sellers. Yep.
If that's all, you didn't do it or whatever, and the appraisal comes in low, then get the appraisal report and really look at the relevant properties and the comparables that they used and make sure that those are the same ones that you would have used, and look to see, is the data actually accurate, and go for that low-hanging fruit. And then outside of that, give some evidence about the condition or the reasons why this one is now more, and see what happens. And then finally, if none of that works, get your lender, a lender that's very good, very quick, that can close a loan quickly, get them maybe involved in the process with the buyer if it's not working.
Absolutely.
With their lender. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Ty. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much for having me again.
Have a great day.
You too.
Hey guys, it's Monica here. I am so excited to introduce you to Real Estate Fight Club's newest partnership, Cyberbacker. Cyberbacker is the best in the business for virtual assistants. How do I know this? Because I am a Cyberbacker customer and I love this company. I have my favorite, Frances. She is my Cyberbacker, been with me for over a year. She's amazing. She makes me better. She's eager to help. She's on time. She's disciplined. She's awesome. And this company, Cyberbacker, has figured out the system. From the interviewing process to find out what I need, to the interviewing process to interview several Cyberbackers, to the onboarding process, to the training process, very buttoned up, very awesome. You and I both know it's time for you to leverage. It's time for you to take that step, and Cyberbacker is a really safe, awesome solution. Make sure to mention Fight Club and you will be getting a free gift. All right, do it. Make the call. See ya.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a podcast.